Hey, hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of the Mr. Warren Hayes Show. I, of course, am Mr. Warren Hayes, and I cannot tell you how appreciative I am to see you here today on a Tuesday. That's right. We recorded the Mr. Warren Hayes Show a day early. Did the whole recording live, as I usually do, on youtube.com/MrWarrenHayes on Monday night, on Monday the 27th. So you're listening to this on the 28th of November 2023. So, you know, there's a certain promo that is happening from a certain returning pro wrestler to a certain promotion on a Monday night that I haven't heard, that I haven't spoken of, won't be included in my discussion about him, but nonetheless, everything pretty much stands. I think, regardless of the promo, everything sort of stands all by itself, and look, we'll be fine even if I don't talk about CM Punk's Monday Night Raw promo. We've got lots to talk about in regards to CM Punk, but before we do, how about some likes? Why don't you? A like on this video would help out tremendously, grow the podcast, as would subscriptions, as would 5-star reviews on Apple Podcast or 5-star ratings on Spotify over on the audio side of things. All little gestures, little things that you can do to help grow the podcast, and I would appreciate it a great deal. Thank you very much. If you have the inclination on doing that, I would be very grateful. And you can also join the Mr. Warren Hayes Show Discord, and I will be grateful if you do that, and we will be able to interact a little more. We'll be able to chit-chat about things in regards to professional wrestling. It's a nice little spot, and we don't just talk about pro wrestling either. Movies, video games, television shows, music. We go through everything. All of your interests are covered in one little Discord. The link is in the description. We'd love to have you there. Otherwise, I will be back on Thursday, on Thursday for the Dynamite review, Sunday for the Collision review. We're doing all of that. And heads up, I'm going to be recording an episode of the Gentleman's Wrestling Podcast with Jesse Collins, fellow Voices of Wrestling contributor. And on top of that, the other guy from WrestleNomics. There's Brandon, and then there's Jesse, and he has his own podcast, the Gentleman's Wrestling podcast, which I've already been on, and we're going to be talking about MJF, so that's going to be exciting. Be recording that later this week, so keep an eye on Blue Sky, on the Discord, on the community tab here on YouTube, to make sure that you don't miss out on that, because it should be a lot of fun. It'll be a good time, I'm convinced. Just as I'm convinced that tonight is a good time. We're talking CM Punk returning to WWE. It's a CM Punk podcast. I don't know what to tell you. Survivor Series review as well. And the Continental Classic. We're going to have ourselves a little update, see how things are going in the gold and blue leagues after their first nights of action. So we go over that. But let's just kick this off with the weekly wrestling inspection. Thank you for being here. We have to start the podcast with the lead. Don't bury the lead, as they say. I say that enough here, as if I'm some sort of journalist, but nonetheless, it would be very irresponsible to begin with anything else. But CM Punk has returned to WWE. This is where we have to start, right? There's no other spot. There's nothing else. What else could it be? What else could you start off with when you've got CM Punk making a return to WWE after being fired with cause from AEW? Now, I'm sorry, and I apologize to a degree if you are already fatigued about this, if you're already exhausted about some CM Punk talk, especially if you're hanging out on, X, formerly Twitter, which I hear is a complete shit show. I say get your jokes in. I've been laying some jokes down on Blue Sky. Follow me on Blue Sky. You know what? Pop in the Discord, the Mr. Warren Hayes Show Discord. If you don't have a code for Blue Sky, let me know. Hit me up with a DM. The link is in the description, and send me a DM. I'll hook you up. I got a couple of codes. I'm accruing a stash of codes. So I've got some to help you go through the bouncers if you're interested. But I'm getting my jokes in, right? I'm getting my jokes in. I'm doing my stuff. And I understand if people are already fed up and tired about it. I get it, because it's an exhausting subject, don't get me wrong. But as I have said before, and I said it when he was fired from AEW, and I remember clearly saying, and I'd said it before, and I'll say it now. We will always discuss CM Punk on this podcast. This is not a safe zone against Charles Montgomery Punk, against Chicago-made Punk, against Chick Magnet Punk, against Cookie Monster Punk, whatever the fuck it means. Wrestling is so much more interesting with him involved. It was the case back in the 2000s, the early 2010s. And he shows back up, and it has been nothing but interesting since. So, strap in, saddle up, giddy up, get ready. CM Punk is going to continue to be a topic here. So he shows up, just in case you don't know. Maybe you haven't been paying attention. Maybe I'm your sole connection to the world of professional wrestling. And to that I say, oh boy. But he showed up at Survivor Series this weekend after the show had, quote unquote, gone off the air. They did the whole NXT the whole NXT outro gimmick, with the little thing to indicate that the show's over, the copyright thing, but they continued running. Triple H using his old but nonetheless effective tropes, don't get me wrong. And it's pretty much 90 days. Pretty much 90 days since he was fired with cause. Like, I don't know what the exact date would be, but we're very, look, if it's not exactly 90, we're very close, right? He all in, all out. Or was he released? Look, who the fuck cares? Like, it doesn't matter. And we don't even know if he had a 90-day clause. We don't know what happened. Look, all we know is that Tony Khan can't legally talk about it, right? He said that, today in an interview. The BBC asked him. But this had been kept a secret, a complete secret from most people in the World Wrestling Entertainment Company. And it came to a complete surprise for, well, everyone, I'd say. I don't know who wasn't, at the very least, taken aback, right? I think there was this underlying feeling, will he, won't he, will he show up, I think everyone just got shocked, surprised. No one was told, no one knew. But we do have details, and we turn to both Fightful and Pro Wrestling Insider for these details. We'll go with Mike Johnson here, who reported that the deal between the two sides, between Punk and WWE, is believed to be for, quote unquote, several years in length. And that the company had their first talks with old CM over just the last week. Pardon me. We are told that once the ice was broken, the deal came together rather quickly and is being seen by the WWE side as a quote unquote new beginning. Okie dokie. Yes. Based on what was inferred to PW Insider, the two sides actually came to terms officially at some point on Saturday. They wanted to keep him for the Royal Rumble, apparently. Again, this is according to Mike Johnson. But they thought the longer they waited, the riskier the leak would be, which is fair. We'll touch on that in a minute. Let's go through the deets here. WWE, CM Punk's last WWE event was in January 2014, when he just quit and walked out of a post-Royal Rumble Raw taping, which completely overhauled the WrestleMania plans for that year that opened up the door for Bryan Danielson, Daniel Bryan. Punk was supposed to wrestle Triple H, right? I think that was the thing. Who just so happens right now to be in charge. He later cited an undiagnosed staph infection, an injury, and exhaustion on the infamous edition of Colt Cabana's podcast, which then led, of course, to the lawsuit with WWE and their Dr. Amon, and which then led to the falling out between CM Punk and Colt Cabana. So, and of course, then after that, disappears for 7 years, right? Is what the Lord tells us. And only to show back up in AEW in 2021. And then to get fired. Was it 2020? Yeah, it was 2021, right? Was it 2021? Like, I feel CM... Yeah, it was 2021, right? He shows up. Yeah, that's it. And then he did the... I'm so confused now. Why am I drawing a blank here? Like, time is such a flat circle. It wasn't during the pandemic. Or was it during the pandemic? No, it was out of the pandemic. Yeah, no, it's 2021. Yeah, it's 2021. It's 2021. Okay, but listen, back to the return. Fightful Select said that that when the time came, Triple H took over production for the segment. So he kicked out everyone. He kicked everyone out of the room. Is like, hey, I'm doing this now. And he said that CM Punk stepped out in front of everyone just minutes before it was time for him to walk out. So this was a closely kept secret. Only a few people were informed about this situation, and the talent in the main event were informed before the War Games match that this was going to happen. So when I see everyone losing their minds over, Seth Rollins flipping him the bird and, having to be escorted away by security. And then we've heard reports that Drew McIntyre left stomping out with I'm like, okay, sure. Seth is setting himself up to be first in line to fight CM Punk. Seth is going to do a Cody for CM Punk. Seth is the highest paid gatekeeper in all of pro wrestling right now. He puts over the stars. He's the highest paid JTTS of all time. CM Punk is going to be challenging for the consolation prize. He can't go after Roman's prize. He's going to go for the consolation belt. Try main eventing WrestleMania with that, Phil. Anyway. Those are, the details up that we know at this point. Again, look, I'm recording this on Monday, a few minutes before CM Punk is supposed to go on Raw and cut a promo. So, there's stuff that he might say there that, that I won't be referencing here specifically, but my sentiments and what we're going to break down here doesn't change. I don't think his on-air promo on Raw is going to change the rest of of what I have to talk about here, I think it's all a work. I think Drew... Here, listen. Why would this news leak out of WWE, which is, quite frankly, airtight? Airtight. There are no leaks that come out of WWE. Haven't been for a while. Why? Because everyone's happy. That's the only explanation. AEW was the same thing for a while when it started and everyone was happy. Then it's always the same thing. When stuff starts going downhill and people start losing their patience and things aren't going their way, then things start to leak. Then we start hearing about, oh, this guy sucks. Oh, this girl sucks. Oh, this thing is terrible. Oh, they're hard to work with. They're difficult to work with, right? That's when you start. And that's what WWE does. And I'm sorry to say, but a lot of the information that these outlets get from WWE is from official sources. And I'm not saying discreet sources that are talking, in deep throat manner, in the parking lot, dimly lit parking lot with a trench coat and with the collar popped to conceal their faces. No. Like officially, true to form sources reaching out saying, well, this is what happened. And then they run with it. That's how WWE is operating right now. There are no leaks, which doesn't mean that there's no backstage shit. But everything is twisted on tight. No one's talking. So when I hear Drew McIntyre stormed out because he was mad, I'm like, what? Who cares? Like that, it's clearly a story. It's clearly a work. There's not much to glean here. That's planted information. That's something that WWE wanted the sheets to know, wanted us to know. Just like, these videos showing up and it's like, Seth Rollins is extremely mad. Seth Rollins, complete yes man of the company, right? A WWE lifer from top to bottom, right? He absolutely would not risk any of this, would not risk his spot, his position in this company. A guy who has been rah WWE all his life. You think all of a sudden because Phil Brooks shows up, he's going to throw a tantrum in front of a live crowd? Come on now. These are all works. These are all people jockeying for positions, jockeying to get the match with Phil. And here's the thing is that Seth, with all of his shit talking about CM Punk, about the you're a cancer, don't come here and all that shit. He's just angling for the better position. This is the match everyone wants to see. Oh God, Seth can't stand him. I'm just saying it's smart. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm not saying it's smart. It's all a work. These are workers. And good evening to you, Echo Flare, our boy Ben. Nice to see you. And the fact is, they were all aware. This is the thing that's crucial to this experiment here that we're talking about. They were all aware. It was reported by two different sources. The main eventers were taken aside before the War Games match, and they were made aware that CM Punk was going to show up after. So they all knew. There was no shock. There was no surprise. Not at least in front of us. They all knew. Anyway, I'm going to tell you, for a 45-year-old guy coming off two major injuries and has a history of getting into continued fights backstage, he's got a pretty good gig here. He's landed himself a pretty sweet little gig here. Just to reiterate what I said at the top here, I am completely fine with him coming back. I'm not a CM Punk guy. And quite frankly, I think the more things progress, the more I kind of think he's not a good guy. But I'm completely for 100% him being back in the spotlight, in the limelight of professional wrestling, because professional wrestling is much more entertaining with him in it than not. So I'm glad he's back. Now, why did WWE bring him back? Right? I think it was something that was inevitable. It's something that we've talked about before. And I thought, and I told you all, I think it's going to be inevitable that he shows back up in WWE. The question was when. If there's one thing I'm surprised about, is that they did it so soon. Is that they decided to pull the trigger here. That's what surprises me more than anything else. And because listen, WWE's business right now is doing well. It's not suffering. It's not, in a nosedive. They're doing tremendous attendance. They're doing good ratings. They're all of their observable business metrics. All the consumer business metrics that we can observe, the only ones that we really can't are the PLEs, right? Because they sit on that data. They don't show it to anyone. But everything else has been good to great. They've been on an uptick. Vince is gone. The product feels better. Fans are tuning in more. But the business. So I thought, here's the thing. I thought that once things really started to drop, where you'd start to see the less people going to shows, then they'd have CM Punk at the other end on speed dial, right? And they just, they'd do a, hey Alexa, call CM Punk, and they'd bring him in. So I'm a little surprised here, which got me thinking, well, why did they bring him in here? Was it really, as Triple H said, was it really just, if we waited a little longer, the secret might have leaked? Sure, but is that really the only reason? I have two theories, and I think they're both complementary. I don't think they're mutually exclusive here. I think the first reason is because, and I talked about it with some very knowledgeable people, WWE's business for the past couple of months, recently, and I'm not talking over the past year, but over the past couple of months, business has been stagnating. Little drops in ratings on Raw. SmackDown is leaving Fox, going back to USA. Raw doesn't have its TV deal yet. I think this was a very business-oriented decision because they saw a little bit of a downslope happening. They still have to negotiate the Raw deal, and they don't want their business metrics to go down. They're a publicly traded company. They have to create value for the investors. So bring back a fucking star that will generate interest, that will get people to buy merch. They already have the CM Punk t-shirts at the ready. They're being sold at the arenas right now, which honestly does not lend credence to the idea that CM Punk was only signed yesterday morning. I'm just saying, or Saturday morning. Can you do that kind of turnaround on t-shirt merch? Like maybe 48 hours, I don't know, maybe. I don't want to get into that though. I don't want to get into that level of conspiracy, but it's a little weird. But I think there's part of that. Hey, Zach McGibbon, nice to see you and welcome. That's right, pro wrestling is back, baby. But the thing here is that, and I think this is crucial right now, is that business was starting to just go down. I don't want to say slip. I don't want to say and going down it was stagnating. It wasn't as high as it was just a few months ago. You get the injection in. You show your investors that you're able to do this. You show your potential business partners, look, the other guys tried to bring him in and couldn't handle it. We'll handle it. We got the big guns here. The people, the guys that people want to watch. We have them. So I think that's That's one theory as to why they did it so soon. The other theory, they just wanted to kick AEW in the no-nos. They just wanted to give him a swift kick in the chops while AEW is suffering and is down by all consumer metrics except pay-per-views. And it's not like WWE where it's like, oh, stagnating, a little drop here, a little drop there. No. AEW's business is not in a good place right now. They're selling out a fourth of the capacity of the arenas they're going to for Dynamite tapings, for Collision tapings. That's not good. You can sit here and go, yeah, they're doing better. The walk-up situation is really, really great for AEW, and you can try and spin this any way you want. But the end result is there are less and less people watching AEW and going to shows than a year ago. Then, hey, let's pump the brakes. Than 7 months ago. So I absolutely, and considering, the history that Tony and CM Punk have now, this was all there's the business aspect of it to humiliate them, but it was also a very petty, very calculated move by Phil to just grind the axe that he has with Tony. And if you don't think that counts in the mind of CM Punk, you haven't been paying attention to the past 3 years or so. You haven't been paying attention to the entirety of his career. This is a man who carries a grudge. He has no problem. He's got no wonder, like his fucking legs are shit, having to carry all of those grudges every day. This is a guy who had Brian Alvarez, who heard Brian Alvarez speak one cross word about him, and he dug up an email from 2007 to try and throw shade at Brian Alvarez. Who hangs on to emails that they had in 2007? So again, these are not mutually exclusive situations. I think it's just a win-win type of thing. A little boost in ratings and attention, in attendance, and merch sales, and all of these revenue streams that WWE has. Plus, at the same time, hey, if by the way we can give the old 1-2 to Tony Khan at the same time, hey, it's an overall win for everyone. So, and I think that makes sense, right? So of course, he's doing this out of a grudge. WWE is doing this to make sure that they can land a good TV deal for Raw. I don't think it's any deeper than that. Now, where it gets deeper is when we start talking about like motivations. What are things going to happen? What are things going to do here, and so on and so forth. Like, how is this going to go? How is CM Punk going to get along with the WWE locker room this time? Because Gibby just said it, and I was about to set it up for this, right? Because if there's one thing that you always need to keep in mind about CM Punk, and it is a recurring theme here on the show, will he burn bridges? Will he throw it all to hell? Will he, get people mad at him backstage? Will he? It is not a question of if he will do it. It's a question of when. When he returned to wrestling in AEW, I won't say we, I'm going to speak for myself. I was very hopeful, right? Because you sit back, you look at the guy, and he seems genuinely excited to be there. He seems genuinely happy to be in a wrestling ring, to hear the cheers, to not be in the WWE environment, to be back in a crowd doing what he's always loved to do. Don't get me wrong. He's a guy who loves pro wrestling, right? That's something that undeniable. You can say a lot of bullshit about CM Punk as much. One thing you cannot say is that he doesn't love pro wrestling. He doesn't love the business. That's something that he owns and is entirely true. And he comes back and he's smiling and he feels calm and he feels cool. And you're like, this is 7 years later. This is 7 years after, the epitome of pro wrestling bullshit, right? Of him getting fired on his wedding day, of all this stuff, right? This is 7 years ago. The man has to have changed, right? The man 7 years older. You're away from everything that made you feel bad, that chewed at your mental health, that you said yourself. This is bad for your mental health. You come back. I was hopeful. I was like, man, I want to believe in a redemption run for Phil. I want to believe in it. And I believe that's what we talked about. I believe that's how I posited it at the time. I'd have to go back and listen to audio, but I won't. It's not that important. And the way he was coming in and talking about the young guys and wanting to do all this shit, and I was like, oh, this feels good. This really does feel good to have the guy without whom, and I also think this is difficult to argue against, the guy without whom AEW would not exist. The guy who was the patron saint of the hardcore wrestling fan, of the guy who resented, the people who resented how WWE was presenting wrestling and how it was portrayed in North America. So, when it all went to shit, the sad part is that none of us were really surprised. I wasn't surprised. I was more like disappointed. It was more a question of, well, it was inevitable, I guess. Tigers and stripes and whatnot. So is he going to do it in WWE? Listen. WWE is a much tighter run ship. I think there's a clear chain of command. I think there's people in that company who, in WWE, who won't take his guff, kind of thing. I don't even think he's on a full-time deal. Why would you put CM Punk on a full-time deal? Several years, sure. The part-time, you bring him in for the big shows and then you send him home. I mean, that's how I've been saying that he should be treated when he goes back to WWE, right? Bring him in for give him the Brock deal, essentially, right? But I'm going to tell you, I would not be surprised in the slightest if CM Punk, this time around, if CM Punk's run in WWE was spotless, and where he, not that he got along, that he'd get along with everyone, but that we would never hear talk about him, getting into fights or causing chaos or commotion, because I sincerely believe he will do whatever it takes to stick it to Tony Khan, to stick it to the Elite, the Bucks, Kenny, everyone involved here, to show, hey, I go to this place here. Everyone's a goddamn professional. And I'm not, and no one seems to have a problem with me here. So I guess it has to be them who were the problem, not me. as I've been telling you all along. And I think, knowing how much this man is fueled by gripes and pettiness, I am convinced that this will fuel him into making sure that his time in WWE is smooth sailing. I'm convinced. He wants, I'm sure that part of it here, look, he's going to be petty. And if he's petty on his promo on Raw, honestly, I hope he is. I hope he is. Because the wrestling wars fucking rule. And I want more of this shit. I love this shit. I think it's great. But knowing how petty he is, knowing how long and how determined he is to carry grudges, I am convinced that he is going to do everything in his power to make sure that he comes across in his time now in WWE here as a model employee, so that he can, because that's going to be a way to stick it to AEW. Tony Khan can't manage shit, bunch of children running the show, etc., etc., etc. And I know I'm sitting here and I'm telling you it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. And I firmly believe that. But there's a part of me who says, because of his personality, because of what drives him professionally, ultimately, he will carry a grudge. And he will do, I would not be surprised that he does everything in his power to be a good guy here and not ruffle any feathers, to just show that it's the other guys who are the problem. And that he was right all along. That he was not to blame for Brawl Out. That he did not take a swing. That he did not hit Jack Perry. That everyone else back there, it's poor management. I think both are possible. I still think he's going to explode at some point, but look. This is a guy, I don't know if you remember this. This is a guy who said that he was quoted as saying that he stopped being in pro wrestling when he joined WWE. Remember that? This is a guy who was fired on his wedding day. This is a guy who said that the company was bad for his mental health, that they wanted him to work injured. The staph infection and the other injuries and whatnot. This is a guy who systematically would take any opportunity to badmouth the company. Badmouth Triple H. This is a guy just a couple of years ago who called out The Miz about going to a Saudi show and taking blood money. This is a guy who rode a high horse. Thought he was better than these people. Thought he was better than all of it. He was the foundation of the feeling that eventually developed into All Elite Wrestling. That whatever WWE was presenting was not pro wrestling. That it was a bastardization, sports entertainment. It was very punk of him at the time to walk out and leave. To say, fuck this shit. You guys have been screwing me around. He was the voice of the voiceless. Goes into AEW. And the question that I still have is, what good is CM Punk? What good is he if he is not a voice of the voiceless anymore? Because the voiceless has a voice now. Or at least that it did back then. Back in those, couple of years ago in AEW, they had the voice. What did CM Punk have to bring? Where was the what did he have to fight? What establishment did he have to take down that he was fighting against, struggling against? Who was trying to push CM Punk down, which is at the very core of his legend in WWE? That's what he was always all about. WWE ignoring the fans, not listening to how over he was, continuing to push Cena and Taker and so on and so forth. Why was he being denied? Why were the fans being denied? He goes to AEW. There's no voiceless. Everyone's happy. Everyone's like, finally, here he is, our savior, in the position that he deserves to be in. So even then I questioned, and I remember asking this question directly to you all. What good is the voice of the voiceless when the voiceless has a voice now? So what is he bringing to WWE? Is he gonna get back into his old fight with Triple H? Who the fuck cares? Because he's not going to be struggling for a spot anymore. He's got it. CM Punk did some very punk rock things in pro wrestling. But it is not very punk rock of him to join the billion-dollar market leader to make oodles of money and stick it to his old boss. Again, and if he doesn't have the anti-establishment angle to him, if he's not fighting against some kind of authority, what is CM Punk? He's just another guy. Charismatic, capable, good worker, great storyteller, in ring, out of the ring, tremendous mic worker, incredible audience connection. But it's not very punk rock of him. Some would maybe say he sold out. If we're going to start using some good old-fashioned punk rock idioms here. And he'll try to justify this in multiple ways. Oh, we grew up. We're changed men now. That's what Triple H said. Oh, we're changed now. I'm a changed man. He's a changed man. I'm like, no, he's not a changed man. He's the same fucking guy. What are we talking about? He hasn't changed. He's the same guy who was fucking doing bullshit in Ring of Honor. The same kind of bullshit in Ring of Honor. If anything, CM Punk, I think the revelation that I have here is that CM Punk is just another pro wrestler like all of them who are just looking for the next paycheck, want to make a ton of money, and the rest sort of can, go to the side. It's like all these people, who stuck around WWE when the Vince accusations started pouring in. Only Eric fucking Young left the company when Vince returned. The only person who left the company because he said to himself, I cannot abide by this. I cannot work for this company under Vince McMahon. So he took his ball and he left. No big loss, he'll say. He wasn't on, he hadn't even been back on TV. I'm sure that's not the point. The point is that He couldn't do it. And how many others going around saying, oh, what Vince did is disgusting, so on, but yet all stuck around. How many wrestlers in World Wrestling Entertainment left that company because of Vince's alleged scandals? Because of his years of known bad behavior. Known! None is the answer. Zero, zilch. Wrestlers that I thought would, didn't. So Punk probably has all the justifications in his head as to why he's doing this, but you know what? If I'm a guy or a gal or a non-binary, whatever, who is a fan of CM Punk and has been a fan of CM Punk for years and has always been like, yeah, fuck the establishment, so on and so forth, and he ends up voluntarily going back to WWE when it is in the most monolithic position it has been in the entire history of the company. $billion company. TV deals coming out the wazoo, money coming out the wazoo, sponsorships, advertising, like they're huge, tremendous. And he voluntarily goes back again. That is not very punk rock of you, CM Punk. And I'm just waiting. I'm going to wait very calmly, and I know a lot of you have you're already prepared for this, but and it's not because I want to give him a chance. I'm just going to let this simmer, and it'll be all the more juicier. If certain shows in World Wrestling Entertainment happen and CM Punk decides to show up on certain shows, I will be very excited to come back here and talk about the ongoing hypocrisy of this man. A guy, again, who built his entire persona on being anti-establishment, on being a rebel, on being a guy who will stick up for the little guy, and is now working with the monolith. He's a pro wrestler. He's nothing special. He's just another pro wrestler looking for a payday. He's just like the others. If you thought he was special, I'm sorry to say, he's just proved it. He's not. He's just one of the others. And in general, I don't have a problem with any wrestler jumping to WWE. Well, who cares, right? I'm all for negotiating and so on and so forth. But in his case specifically, because this is the thing, his identity, how he presented himself, is going against the grain. That's bucking trends, bucking authority. That is always how he's presented himself. That's what his fans buy into. I don't want to pull out the big H word yet. The H word is hypocrisy. I don't want to pull it out just yet, but it's right on the tip of my tongue. It's ready to go. It's cocked and ready to go. But I'm going to wait when it's really worth it. But let that simmer. I want you all, look, y'all are the A+ audience, right? Listen to the D-list podcaster, but y'all are the A+ audience. And I know you can wrap your heads around this. You know, how contrarian to his basic structure, to his beliefs, him going to WWE, going back to WWE after everything that happened. And again, look, even Bret Hart ended up going back. Don't get me wrong, it's still shitty. But in this guy's case, anyway. But listen, all this CM Punk WWE stuff is all fun and games, right? It's all exciting and whatnot. But there is a direct tie-in here with All Elite Wrestling. There's a direct correlation here. How does this look? What does this create as a situation for AEW? How does it make them look? Because look, if you ask me, you probably are since you're here listening to this, this whole thing absolutely reflects very poorly on Tony Khan. Because if Tony Khan had nipped this in the bud the minute that the brawl out shit started, instead of sitting next to him at a press conference as CM Punk is running down his talent, saying they can't manage a target, saying that he works with children, if Tony Khan, instead of sitting there nodding and rather cutting in and saying, look, Phil, hang on a second here, pal. Let's move on to another question. Or why don't you hit the showers or whatever? If Tony Khan had shown any type of leadership, not only would this not be happening, but I'm convinced CM Punk would still be with the company. I think we'd be getting our elite matches with CM Punk and FTR. But what we're getting instead, what we got instead was Tony Khan desperately trying to make everyone happy, trying to keep everything under control, and most importantly, trying to keep CM Punk in his company. Because he brought CM Punk back to wrestling. He wanted he wanted to be the guy, and he has it. But he wanted to be the guy who brought CM Punk back to wrestling. And he loved CM Punk. By all accounts, they were friends. They got along tremendously. They have the same tastes in pro wrestling. It's not even a mystery. So he didn't want him to go. Accommodations, suspensions, all this bullshit, the cloak and dagger stuff. We don't know what's going on. No, there's nothing. There's no clarity. In the meantime, it's weighing on fans. We don't know what's going on. We're annoyed. Everyone's annoyed. Everyone's talking to the dirt sheets, or at least the Punk camp is fanning the flames, making this situation untenable. And Tony Khan is unable to get a hand on it. He's unable to bring this back under control. When all he had to do was put his fucking foot down and get all of these babies around a table. Punk, FTR, Ace Steel, The Bucks, Kenny. Sit them all down at a table and work this shit out. Make them all act like fucking professionals. So this, as much as Punk wants to rub this in Tony's face, Tony only has himself to blame. I'm not saying CM Punk shouldn't do it, whatever the fuck. But Tony Khan only has himself to blame. His lack of leadership, apparent lack of leadership and of direction, led to this situation. Led to what happened on Saturday. Led to the collision bullshit at the WBD upfronts, the bullshit at All In, led to, and even in the meantime, CM Punk banning people from the collision arenas and all this bullshit. If there was leadership in that company, this would not have happened. So, yes, if you ask me, it reflects terribly on AEW, particularly Tony Khan. It shows that the leadership there is a little wonky, putting it politely. There's a lot of people calling this, the end, they're going to die. AEW is not going to pass away. It's not going to disappear. There are worse promotions on planet Earth right now who are still surviving, are still there, and you wonder how. The talent pool is too deep, and there's money. There's NFL football money behind this, and they're going to be making money, and they're going to be getting a television deal. I mean, it looks poorly. It looks poorly in this situation because this was AEW's big star. This was the biggest star they had in the company, and he's now with WWE. Right when you're renegotiating your TV deals with your new broadcast partners, where they might be like, What kind of shop are you running there, Tonster? And then you have more people, vague tweeting. You had Ricky Starks today tweet, over on X, formerly Twitter, the Indeed logo. The jobs hunt website, the job searching website, Indeed. He tweeted out the logo and then he deleted it. Like, all this shit, it's just going to continue. It's going to continue. And I really felt we were gone from that, but we're not. And this is a leadership problem. It's a leadership problem. And so, you can say, oh, well, the roster is going to be the roster, but it might just reflect really poorly when it's time to negotiate deals, which is ongoing as far as we know. Which is happening right now, as far as we know. And you're a little naive if you think that this is not this is not going to be an issue. WWE is hot, and AEW ain't. The good thing about being in a cold, the one thing about a product being hot. A product being hot implies that the product was cold previously. You can't get hot if you weren't cold beforehand, right? And we know WWE was cold as ice for a while. AEW comes in, the challenger brand, the alternative. It's not a good look right now for AEW on multiple circumstances, especially in a moment in time right now where they're doing a very good job at not making themselves look good all by themselves. I said it a little earlier, when the old 1-2 punch, where WWE brings CM Punk in on one hand to improve consumer business metrics, but then on the other hand, just to give AEW the old 1-2 punch, just a little combo, poof poof, while they're down, while they're not doing good. AEW is not in a good spot right now. I don't think it's in a good spot creatively, and that can absolutely be argued and discussed. But business-wise, it is not in a good spot. Observably, quantifiably, it is not in a good spot. It hasn't been for months. Ever since they decided to pivot and do a little more sports entertainment stuff, oddly enough, since May, June, you can observe the downtrends. I don't make it up. There were downtrends even while old Punker was there. Don't know what to tell you. So it's not good optics for AEW. Now, will they bounce back? I would hope so. I hope they will. But the thing here is that if there was ever an event, a thing that happens that would get everyone into a room in that company to sit down and figure out what we're doing next. What are we doing here? Who is this for? If there was ever a time where you had to come in and shake things up and regain this goodwill that AEW had for years amongst its fan base, and blind faith to some degree, where there was a time that it was hard to find fault in AEW's production and what they presented for the longest time. I was doing Dynamite reviews all throughout the year, and review after review for the longest period, like from the end of winter 2022 right up to Revolution. I was sitting at this microphone and I was telling you all, screaming into it, how spoiled we were for getting these tremendous matches week after week, these exciting Dynamites with great wrestling and eventful stuff happening. Just top to bottom, awesome stuff. Something completely different from what the other guys were offering. Completely different. While they were doing the bloodline melodrama, we were getting Bryan Danielson week after week going through a gauntlet of opponents set up by MJF, which led to a tremendous match at Revolution. But now AEW is in this spot where it doesn't have an identity. It doesn't know what it is anymore. It wants to be, to bring the ice cream analogy into the situation. They want to bring all the flavors, so that everyone can taste a little bit. They're going to present all the flavors. But when you do something to try and please everyone, you end up pleasing no one. And this is a constant throughout, not just wrestling, music, entertainment, film. It's always the same. You do something to try and please everyone, and you end up pleasing no one. We need to get new fans, so we're going to try and do what they like. But we already like over here, right? It's like Mumford & Sons. You remember Mumford & Sons? They had the stomp and holler guys. It was very niche. It was very catchy. Then all of a sudden they flip around and then they do they use some plugged in instruments. They start using electric instruments. And they do a very bog standard, very average pop album because that's what sells. But tons of other acts were already doing it really, really well. And the fans of Mumford & Sons were like, well, what the fuck is this shit? That's not why I will listen to these people. If there was ever, circling back, I think this is a wake-up call moment. I think this is a moment where you mobilize the troops. I think this is where you get everyone who's been whispering in your ear. If I'm Tony Khan, everyone who's been whispering in my ear, I start double guessing them. And I'm not quite sure anymore. I'm not quite sure if this new direction is where we're going. I think I need to shake things up. I think I need to recenter on things that made us who we were from the get-go. Because right now, they're doing the sports entertainment stuff, and it's been more and more invasive into the product, into what AEW is. It's starting to look like WWE, right? And I think, ultimately, what wrestling fans wanted was WWE without Vince. They wanted everything they knew about World Wrestling Entertainment, but in a different package away from Vince McMahon because he sucks. and he didn't listen to the audience, and he was combative at some times, and he didn't want to concede anything. It was his way or the highway, right? I think that's fair because look what happened. You had all of these very vocal, bad faith actors going out there and saying, where's the story, right? This match is happening. Where's the story? Why is Kenny Omega and this Vikingo guy a dream match? That's not a dream match. And all of these people being very vocal. Why is this match happening? Where are the stories, so on and so forth? Eventually, this all got to Tony. And he started delivering on that. You want stories? Here are your stories. We're going to give you a story to try and shut them up. Because all they wanted from AEW was another WWE. They just wanted WWE again without Vince. Whereas wrestling fans wanted something different. We still want something different in North America than whatever the hell Vince, whatever Triple H and company are doing. We still want the difference. Tony starts doing these changes. The product starts resembling more and more like WWE. What happens then? Do you really think that we're going to be attracting WWE fans to AEW? WWE fans already think of AEW as the secondary brand, as the cheap brand, the indies. Even if you start doing these wacky skits and these romance angles, they're not going to dump WWE for AEW. They're just not. And AEW constructed a fan base from a grassroots effort, talking directly to fans, creating these press conference events, bringing the fans together. Starrcade had a hand in that as well, bringing everyone together to celebrate pro wrestling, something that hadn't been around for years. And now we're forsaking that. Now Tony Khan is getting combative. Now he's creating sports entertainment. Now he's pushing people that you're wondering, what the fuck is he doing? What? Now everything has this goofball story. Where I was perfectly content in understanding the stories that were going on beforehand. They all made sense. But now everything is bigger. Everything feels like SNL. You know, got to flex these muscles. Now we're doing the backstage exclusives that we're putting up on Twitter, where the wrestlers take, there's a camera that appears backstage and talks to the wrestlers out of the element, right? Just like those WWE exclusives. We're turning more and more and more and more into WWE, and everything that made AEW original and unique is out the door. Or it's going out the door. Tony Khan can ask me to put my money where my fucking mouth is and watch the Continental Classic. But when I have to sit through the rest and see where this company is going, I'm not sure I'm into it regardless. There's an identity crisis within AEW. And there's hires that happened over the past couple of years, and Pat Buck and Jimmy Jacobs. I was sitting here telling you it's great that these guys are in. And I remember saying every single time, geez, I wonder what kind of effect they're going to have on AEW moving forward. What kind of effect are they going to have? I think we're seeing it now. They're doing things that not even WWE is doing these days. I don't know what... There's a wake-up call. There's a wake-up call that has to happen in this company if it wants to really turn things around. Because, yeah, the CM Punk returning to WWE thing exposes a lot of things, exposes a tremendous amount of weaknesses in a time where they're already losing fans, losing interest. It doesn't feel like the hot company it once was. It can turn around. I am absolutely not saying in any way, shape, or form that the AEW is dying. Not at all. Not even close to even those words coming out of my mouth. It's not even a sentiment I have. But I do want them to get back on track. And they have to now. This is a wake-up call. This is a situation where if you ever had a moment where you have to look inward and say, okay, what are we not doing right? How can we change this for the better? If there was ever a time that they needed to do it, it's now. Because they have zero momentum right now, which is wild when you think 2 years ago how they were positioned. Just crazy. And how deep this roster is. And I still believe it. I still believe it. At AEW in 2023 is the greatest wrestling roster I believe has ever been collected in one single place at any given time in pro wrestling history. The roster is so fucking dead. Great. Dead. The roster's not dead. This roster's so fucking great. Deep with talent. Just tremendous stuff. But it adds to their woes. Their multiple woes. Will Tony show leadership? Will he show that he still understands his fans? Or is he starting to go down the Vince route? Where it's like, no, we're going to do what we want. And you're going to like it. What's the saying? You live long enough to become the thing you hate? Right? CM Punk, Tony Khan, two sides of the same coin. But enough talk about CM Punk. Let's talk about the real big event of the weekend, the Survivor Series War Games 2023, which happened at the Allstate Arena in Rosemont, Illinois. Again, it's not Chicago. I think we have this discussion every time, but ever since I went to Chicago and I was told by Chicago area people that where I was going was not considered Chicago, and it's bullshit to call it Chicago. All right, fair. Yeah, okay, I get it now. Yeah, so this happened this Saturday. This all happened Saturday. A tremendous Saturday evening. There was also a collision going on. So I'm going to tell you, this is my assessment. This is my overall feeling of Survivor Series, okay? And I'll give it here. Yes, our friend Ross does have very close, but that's generally who I'm referring to. about how things are divided in Chicago. Anyway, here are my thoughts on Survivor Series, and if you don't want to listen to the nitty-gritty, at least you'll know how I feel about it, but here's the long and short of it. It was a very standard wrestling show that had no real great moments, no real great matches, just nice little things happening, doing all the right stuff for the WWE fans to cheer, but otherwise leaves you. It was a pretty light diet of pro wrestling. I can't tell you here I don't even think this was a good show. I think it was all right. Just thought everything happened and just felt uninspired and a little dull, to be honest. Little bright spots here and there, but Let's talk about it. Let's start off with, which was probably my match of the night, the women's War Games match, where Becky Lynch, Charlotte Flair, Bianca Belair, and Shotzi it's not Blackheart anymore. Shotzi defeating the Damage Control group, Bayley, Asuka, Io Shirai, and Kairi Sane. So, listen, thank you, Gibby. Here's the thing. The main problem that I have with WWE War Games matches, and this goes for the men and the women. This is a carbon copy. This is carbon copy analysis here. Is that nothing happens until the match starts, until everyone is in the ring. Literally, nothing happens. The spots are someone comes in, they double team, and then they do a couple of things, and then they wait for the person to come in to even the odds, who does a comeback, and then rinse and repeat. And it's boring. Like, there is nothing happening. In the old War Games, they would already be cutting themselves open, punching the shit out of each other. There would already like semi be a riot in the audience because there was so much indignity happening. Here I'm like, okay, let's get to the match part, and the match part lasts like 5 minutes. You know? So it creates the sentiment. Here's the thing. The formula here is that it creates the old War Games setup. Let me take this from another angle. The old War Games setup creates a sentiment that those who are in peril are truly in trouble until their partner arrives, right? But like real trouble. Because the idea of a War Games match ultimately is to take out the opponent's guys, or in this circumstance, gals, before the match starts so that you can have an advantage. So that this guy is bloodied up and he's got, his arm is fucked up, or, is whatever. He's been knocked out cold. He's dying in the ring, whatever. You know what I mean? I'm exaggerating. So that there's this sentiment of peril, but I don't have this sentiment of peril in these War Games matches. Strip away the cages and just have them do plunder, and I'll be fine. You'll notice everyone, or at least every other person who comes into the match, reaches down under the ring, always at the same spot, and brings in shit. Why? Because they have to rely on the gimmicks, because the match structure isn't working to create drama, to create something that you'll get attached to. That being said, I thought the women, their match I thought it was more fun. Io Shirai, I guess her trash can thing that she did a couple of years ago is now a thing now. She has to do it every War Games. This is going to be something that they're going to add on, that they're going to feature on her highlight reel at her Hall of Fame induction, right? And everyone starts laying in their spots, and it starts getting fun. And the match ends with a KOD on Bayley, and then she gets manhandle slammed by Becky Lynch off the second rope. And we have ourselves a win here. How much did I give this match? What did I rate this? I can't remember. I didn't write it down on my digital notes, so I've got my notes, my notebook. Look, my dog chewed my notebook. You see? Look at that. See? That's my dog who did that. So, to all the kids who said the dog ate my homework, shout out. I'm with you. I'm on your side. Where the fuck did I put it? 3.5 stars is what I gave it. And I think that's my match of the night. So it's not getting any better than this. Damage control. Look, we have to drop a little note about damage control here. Who cares about damage control? And I'm asking this in complete, earnest sincerity. Who possibly could care about damage control as a unit? They have never done anything significant as a group. They are perennial losers. They were brought in at SummerSlam last year as a team to shake things up, and people were excited. And wrestlers that everyone liked, Io Shirai, Dakota Kai, and you're like, yeah, fuck yeah, let's go. This rules. And they never did anything right. They couldn't even win the vacated women's tag team titles. So everything Damage Control does is a fucking dud. And I don't know who still buys into the idea that they're this force. Bayley loses all the time. Good for Io, who finally made it, won a championship, but had to do it, with the fucking briefcase gimmick. And it's like, all this stinks. Like they're not, it's not a compelling group. And you can throw all the people you want, and you can put Kyrie back in it or introduce Kyrie into it, and you can bring Asuka into it. They're goofs. Now I know, and Chad is pointing it out too. I know there's tension with Bayley, right? Which is whatever. But Damage Control has always been booked like schlubs. And still under Triple H's watchful eye. But they've always been booked like schlubs. And I cannot fathom anyone still sitting around going, Damage Control, they're so cool. It's a good group with some talented wrestlers. Some of the most talented pro wrestlers they have in that company, mind you. But they do nothing. They do jack shit. They fail. They are a stable, a faction of geeks. WWE Intercontinental title match where Gunther successfully retained the title by defeating Mike the Miz Miznanen. I thought this match stunk. And I know people are like, oh, yeah. There's this incredible groundswell around this match. And I thought this match was so boring. It's not that it stunk. It was dull. Dull. And but this is what I appreciate the most out of this match. I'll tell you this. Rewatching the video packages, the whole, and I'm like, and listening to this, I gotta say, okay, there is something inherently genius about the Miz Gunther feud because it's based explicitly on the common idea that the Miz is a bog standard wrestler who's out of his depth fighting Walter, and then getting the fan base to believe that he, being the Miz, might overcome his own mediocrity to win this. Like, there's something legitimately genius about it. We are going to push you this challenger for the IC title, knowing that he stinks. Knowing that he is the most vanilla and uninspired pro wrestler around. And you're going to believe that he might overcome his own blandness to beat Gunther. So there's honestly, it's kind of genius. Did it make it more compelling to me? No, I thought it was farcical. But it's brilliant nonetheless, because then you have people going, The Miz is going to be able to do it. Yeah. The King of Soft style. See that? And I love, Gunther saying, you're not on my level. And I mean, where's the lie? Is Gunther the heel here? It's like, he's not. And it's tremendous. But yet, it was like, maybe tonight the Miz will not stink. And we'll dig deep. And I thought it was brilliant. I think there's something brilliant about it. But it's a very fucking boring, average match. .75. Santos Escobar defeated the Dragon Lee, so the LWO is coming apart at the seams, I guess. And look, here's the thing: when it was supposed to be Carlito, right? And then Carlito got injured or they took him out. And then they announced Dragon Lee, and instantly I'm like, this is an upgrade. This is an upgrade, and suddenly I'm excited for a match on a WWE show. Like legitimately excited, where I'm like, this is gonna rule. Santos Escobar, who is a tremendous worker, and Dragon Lee, who is this is Dragon Lee, goddammit, he's extraordinary. So I'm excited for this, and I'm like, are we gonna get a lucha match in WWE? Because this could be it. We could get a full-on lucha libre match on this card. This could tear the house down. This could just like blow everything, blow the roof off the building. We're in Chicago. It's a place where people will appreciate this kind of shit. But this match under-delivered. And it was disappointing. I was stunned at how much of a nothing match it was. Even Corey Graves, at some point, he said something to the effect, looking at Escobar wrestling. He's saying, Escobar, he's brilliant in lucha libre. He hasn't been pulling out the style just yet in this match. And I'm like, no, he has not. You legitimately had. Look, Santos, I'll admittedly haven't seen him like actually go in a while, but he was just like, this is King Cuerno from fucking Lucha Underground. What are we talking about? Okay, this guy has killer written all over him. He's tremendous, and Dragon Lee is legitimately one of the best. He's extraordinary. He is such a fantastic cruiserweight, luchador, whatever you want to call him. I'm like, these two together, it's gonna be magic, but they've both been neutered. There's nothing. It's a bland match. The Americanized version of what Lucha Libre is. Hey, they're doing a fucking Hurricane Rana off the apron. Lucha Libre, the spirit of El Santo lives with us. Someone call Mystico. The spot here's where I thought things were going to kick in. There's one moment in this match where I went, whoa, and I started rubbing my hands. I was like, okay, now we're talking. It's when Escobar grabs Dragon Lee by the mask and he drags him across the ring, right? He beat the shit out of him a bit, and he grabs him like by the mask, like he's got his fingers in the mask, and you think he wants to pull it off, but no, he drags him across the ring by the mask, and I'm like, this rules. All right, let's go. But no, it just turned out to be a big old dribble. So this was another 2 3/4 star match for me, because I'm like, the potential here was incredible, and it's baffling how much of a disappointment this match was and how they underdelivered in every possible way in this match. It was solidly executed. It wasn't sloppy. It wasn't it's just nothing happened out of two guys who absolutely should have torn the house down. Get these Chicago people popping out of their seats. It's a shame, is what it was. Rhea Ripley defeated Zoe Stark to retain the WWE Women's World title. I think this was Rhea Ripley's best match since winning the title. Now, admittedly, I did not see the 70-minute match she had with Natalya on Raw that one night. I'm saying 70 minutes. It was like everyone was losing their minds because they went almost 15 minutes. And apparently it was pretty good, but I didn't see it, admittedly. Admittedly, I didn't see it. So based on what I have seen, right? I think this was her, I really think this was her best match since winning the title. Because, listen, it's not as if she's been having a rogues gallery of top-notch talent, right? Zelina Vega, Raquel Gonzalez, Raquel Rodriguez, right? No, Raquel Rodriguez. Yes, that's what she's called now. For some reason, anyway. And right, and then she had the Natalya match that I had heard about. I didn't see it. Right, the one on that Monday Night Raw. And if I go look at Cage Match, yeah, see, rated at 7.55. The Natalya Rhea Ripley match. Dave gave it 3 3/4 stars. So maybe that's her best match. But from what I've seen, look, I'll hunt it out and it's not all that hard to hunt out and just log on to the Peacock, right? That's fine. But I'll seek it out and I'll watch it to compare it with the Zoe Stark, because I thought this was her best match, and it's no real surprise because Zelina Vega is not a pro wrestler. Raquel Rodriguez is not a good pro wrestler. Zoe Stark is a good pro wrestler. She's a solid pro wrestler, not a sports entertainer. Not I was talking with Kristen about her, during the match. I was like, the thing with Zoe is that she's just a badass. She's just a wrestler, comes in, beats people up, and she's not glamorous. She's not a Sasha Banks. She's not a Charlotte Flair. She doesn't have that aura about her, so you kind of want to poo-poo her, but ultimately, she's one of the most competent and well-rounded talents that they have on their roster. Now, she was a little sloppy in this match. Nerves, whatever the fuck, I think she was nonetheless a little sloppy, which brought the match a little down for me. But I thought Rhea looked great. I thought she was tremendous. Her in-ring persona is spot on great. I don't see who can defeat her until they bring in Jade officially. Where has Jade been? Such a tremendous signing. Oh my gosh, what a game changer. Having her coming out of limousines every week, right and left. Where is Jade now? But Zoe has I've always had a soft spot for her. I think she's very good. I think she's tremendously solid. In this whole era of, the NXT newbies, the NIL kids, she stuck out as superior to most of them on the roster, working above their level, like without even question, right? And I liked her. Stark had an explosive comeback spot here, which was really good. But Rhea Ripley lands a Riptide and gets the win. So there you go. So I think Ivy Nile is still. I think Ivy Nile has more work to do. I'm not saying she's not good, but she's not even close to being as polished as Zoe is. Ivy Nile has tremendous potential. Like, she has the tools, she gets it, but she's not there yet. Well, look, the thing with Jade, right? If they do send her after Rhea, like, whatever, regardless of how you want to look at it, it's just going to be a fresh match. It's just going to be fresh. Otherwise, we go back to the Charlotte well again, or, at the very least, it's a fresh match. And that's what's going to make the Jade run interesting. She's got a lot of fresh matches here. But I will say this, okay? I will say, despite my commentary and so on and so forth, in regards to the matches specifically, you look at how WWE books its women's division and books each of these people who were there as significant, as stars. They make them feel important. So people react when they see them. Rhea is one of the biggest stars in the company. I think that's inarguable. She's absolutely the biggest star of the women's division. And the women's war games, even though, again, despite my commentary and how I feel about women's war games in general and their structure, the WWE war games, she gets, they all come across as stars, as big deals. They just do. So, it's, the quality isn't always there. And I don't think they always focus on the right thing or the right people either. But it's hard to argue that they're not doing a better job at least making their women's division feel more important than AEW does. And I think that's inarguable. And that's a W on WWE's side. And then we had the men's war games. But who cares? CM Punk returned, right? Just another rigmarole, same old war games match. Again, listen, strip away the cages. And what do you got? It's the same bullshit. It doesn't matter. The cages don't matter. Doesn't make it feel more. It doesn't. Ultimately, the cages don't matter. They don't serve to make this more dramatic or more evil or destructive. It's just the same bullshit, So, but yes, Randy Orton comes back and he's jacked as hell. I mean, you look at him and you're like, oh, but dear boy, Willie, what have you been doing? What have you been consuming, sir? Oh yeah, the fucking what did they call themselves? The revival, not the revival. Those are the other guys. What they call themselves? The youngsters, the upstarts, the children of the corn, the legacy. A lot of people really happy to see each other. Yeah, Randy Orton shaking a lot of hands. Randy Orton coming up and everyone going, oh, son of a bitch. have no notes about the men's match. I really don't. It's the same thing. It's always the same thing. And I'm not invested. So none of this matters. I'm just waiting for Cody to finish the story. And now that CM Punk is back, do you think we get The Rock at WrestleMania 2? God, what a triple threat what a triple threat. Right? Roman, CM Punk, The Rock. Poor Cody. I still think Cody is going to go back to AEW after his tour here is done. I think he goes back. I think he had something to prove to... He wanted to prove something to Tony, and I think he's going to go back. But otherwise, listen, this show, I should say, utterly forgettable and droning and boring. And this was a very standard wrestling show that I don't think had anything really. There's not one great match here on this show. And there's stuff happening. Boy, oh boy, there's product placement though. Holy shit. I have seldom been bombarded. Let me say that again. I have not been bombarded with Slim Jim commercials as much in 2023 as I had back in 1996 or whatever. God damn. The Slim Jim car, and this is what we're having the New Day do? Hey, we're coming out of the Slim Jim car. And then, these are chips. No, these are crisps. Chips. Crisps. Chips. Crisps. I'm like, what the fuck is this? And then my other thought is, this could be on AEW. And I kid you not. Anyone have a hankering for some ruffles? WWE closer and closer to becoming just one big old commercial. Anyway, those were my Survivor Series thoughts. And now we are going to... let me write this down properly here. Now we're going to... break down, going to talk about the Continental Classic and where we're at right now in the C2, as the kids like to call it. AEW's first attempt at a round robin G1 style tournament. So both leagues were in action this week. Started off last week on Dynamite, continued on Collision this weekend. Everyone except for two wrestlers have their everyone but two wrestlers have scored points, have had their matches and are on the board. This is what our standings are like for now. John Moxley, Jay White, and Swerve Strickland all won their matches, so they all have 3 points. Roosh, Jay Lethal, and Mark Briscoe all lost their matches, so they're still at a big old donut. That's in the Gold League. As far as the Blue League goes, it's Claudio and Brody King, who both got 3 points with victories over Daniel Garcia and Eddie Kingston, respectively. And so they are at 0 points. And Danielson and Andrade still have not wrestled, so they are at 0 for now, but that's going to change this weekend as both guys, this will be Danielson's return to the ring since, when's the last time he wrestled? Zack Sabre Jr. Wrestle Dream. There we go. So this is pretty cool. I think this is exciting. I think this is, exciting how? I might be getting a little excited myself here. Let's pump the brakes a little bit. I think that we're off to an interesting start, but right now, the biggest surprise, I guess, is Brody King defeating Eddie Kingston. And I think this is something that was needed. I talked about it on the Collision review this week, but let's rehash this a little bit. I think one of the things that makes these tournaments fun is when you have, shoo-ins or favorites who take it on the chin, who eat a loss, who you end up, eating a little shit, if you may. And that's a criticism that I had on the first night of Gold League last week when I did the Dynamite review, that everyone who you thought was going to win won. I would have had Mark Briscoe go over Jon Moxley, if only because it makes things exciting. Because look, Moxley, super protected in AEW, doesn't take losses often. You have Mark Briscoe coming out of nowhere, beloved Mark Briscoe, a guy that everyone is just instinctively rooting for. We all want the best for Mark Briscoe. What a shit couple of months he's had, and he's finally in a, a mainstream wrestling promotion. He's making lots and lots of money. We all feel good for him, right? And the tragedy that befell, his brother and his family, you're like, come on, it's like, this would have been just like a nice moment and a good surprise. And it was built that way, where Mark at multiple times in the match, we thought he was going to do it, but Moxley ended up winning. And I understand, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying fucking Mox. I understand the logic of having Jon Moxley win his first match at this. He's one of the odds-on favorites, right? This is inevitable. But it's hard to not draw comparisons with the G1, right? But one of the things Gedo does on every opening night of the G1 is he throws you a curveball. He's going to have Naito lose to a scrub. He's going to have Tanahashi lose to a scrub. He's going to have someone lose to a kid or someone that you don't expect to win, but he's going to make it up later in the tournament, right? Or whatever. I think that's what we missed here. We missed that kickoff moment for this tournament that establishes, hey, anything can happen here. We're in tournament mode. Mark just brought it. He had the better game plan, whatever. He was able to blindside Mox. Who cares? Like, give whatever explanation you want. Mark Briscoe was just the better man. He won. And that would have been a talk of the town. You would have held on to the news cycle over the next few days, where people get excited about your fucking tournament. Now it's just like, well, it's all people we kind of expected to win, right? However, they did that. They did exactly that on Saturday with Brody King. Excuse me. They did that with Brody King defeating Eddie Kingston, where I would feel like, as the champion coming in, as the guy holding the two belts and wanting to retain them, yeah, he'd probably, score his opener. But no, they had Brody win, which is, in my opinion, a surprise. That one was where I was like, holy shit. Plus, probably my favorite match of the tournament so far. Now, the problem that I had with this victory of Brody King is that I feel commentary didn't drive it home enough as to how big a deal it was. I don't believe anyone really expected Brody to win his first match. And I don't expect anyone to be saying, yeah, Brody is winning the tournament. I think, he's a guy who's going to score a couple of big wins, but ultimately he's, he'll probably tie with someone and lose through a tiebreaker situation. But he's going to have a good showing, but he's not going to win. But defeating the guy who keeps saying, this is my life's work, I'm putting on the line. This is, I think that it was tremendous, but not put over enough by commentary as to how big a deal this was, to make it feel special, so that over the next few days we can be like, holy shit, Eddie Kingston, champion Eddie Kingston lost his opener. And that's part of the conversation. I mean, that's part of the story that we're telling here. So as it stands right now, I think the tournament in the matches that have happened are fine. Okay? Like, good matches. Everything's going well. Claudio and Garcia was a good little match, and the story they told is that fortunately Garcia is still a little outclassed by Claudio, who seems to be in final boss mode in the tournament. I think, it's, if they play this right, Claudio, if they play this right, I would go all the way to the final night of league action with Claudio and Danielson running roughshod through everyone else, and then they're the last two left, and they're the last. They fight each other on the last night of competition, is what I'm trying to say, and they're tied. So you have Claudio in final boss mode. You have Danielson, who's a maniac. The BCC guys, like that's the match of the tournament here, or of Blue League. And I've said it. I'm on record, and I'll say it again. I think Blue League is much more compelling than Gold League. I think Blue League, to me, has the potential for some tremendous matches. And I think that's where you're booking. I think that's where you go, right? And that's kind of what's missing in this discussion of the Continental Classic at the same time, is that in the G1 we have the tournament set up, right? We have, the who's fighting who on what night, so we can already see, we can plan out trajectories, we can make some prognostications. Now we just find out. We find out next week, just like any old Dynamite. See, it's like it's any old Dynamite. It's any old match on Dynamite. And this has been my main problem that I've had with the Classic so far, is that the matches are good, don't get me wrong, but they all feel like good little Dynamite matches, good little collision matches, where if you want this tournament to kick off and get to another level and dominate a conversation, dominate a news cycle, you want these matches to blow people away. If Tony Khan and Bryan Danielson and Eddie Kingston do indeed want this tournament to be the greatest wrestling tournament of all time, or in North America, they have to elevate this game so that these matches feel more than your regular Wednesday night affair. That's what you need to do. Because right now, and again, as much as I liked Kingston and King, and as much as I liked Mox and Mark Briscoe, neither of them were great matches. And there haven't been any great matches. The G1s of old, let me say that again. The modern G1, and we're talking the 2000s, 2010s, right? The modern G1s had this quality about them where you'd sit down and you would just be bombarded with tremendous, high-level, high-quality matches, one after the other. No piss breaks. Don't go to the concession stands. Don't go get chicken fingers. You're going to miss out on something, okay? Here, you can absolutely skip them. And the series of tremendous matches helped make the G1 into the thing that it is today, into this thing of legend that people speak of in awe, right? And this is what's missing from the Continental Classic. This is what Tony Khan wants us hardcores to put our money where our mouth is and jump in and join in the festivities. But we want to support something that is truly great. It's one thing to be a promoter and say, I'm going to put on the greatest tournament of all time. And it's another thing to actually deliver on it. Now, that being said, call me a hopeless romantic, I'm still holding out hope that as we progress, these guys are going to start turning it up. As the points becomes more and more scarce, and we start talking about eliminations, and the drama starts kicking in, hopefully these matches will start elevating, right? And the more I think about it, the more I think this is Swerve's tournament to lose, right? He's tremendous. And I hope it continues down this path. And I hope he does win it, because it'll give him something interesting to do. It'll give him something very high profile to do at World's End. But everyone in this tournament needs to buckle down and bring out the best out of themselves to make these matches really feel like they matter. Really feel like the performances matter. Because the win-losses, that's one thing. But what made the G1 great, what makes the G1 great, although you can argue it's not quite the same G1 anymore, but what created the legend of the G1 climax is the high level of competition that happened within it. The high caliber matches. And if Tony Khan is serious about the C2 here, that's what he has to book. That's what he has to tell his guys. That's what they have to agent for. Tear the fucking house down with every match. Don't think the audience needs a breather. If you put on great matches, you won't need piss break matches. You won't need a breather. Compete with yourselves. You know, these guys are all supposed to be competitive, wrangling for spots. Well, go out there and do it. Lay it all on out there. You know what I mean? Don't need a piss. Look at what happened at Full Gear. Yeah, the match that followed the Texas Death Match was the Bucks versus the Jets, the Golden Jets. Right? That was the match that followed, and everyone was like, "Wow, you know, they should have put down a cool down match between that and the main event." But the Bucks, Kenny Omega, and Chris Jericho delivered a tremendous match. And the people were not exhausted. They weren't, they weren't all played out because of everything that happened in the Texas Death Match. They were into this match as well. Why? Because you have talented people going, all right, this is our turn, and our match is not going to be a piss break. We're going to leave it all out there. And they did. Not an easy task. I would not have been thrilled to be the guy to follow Paige and Swerve. But yet, you got these four guys coming out here doing a tremendous thing. Same thing here. You don't have to play on levels. Just go out there and wrestle. And until they do that, I think the C2 won't reach those levels until they do it. But already, maybe next week, look, again, not everyone has wrestled here. There's a little discrepancy in points and whatnot, so we can't quite, it's hard to analyze at this point. We're just out the gate, right? But already next week, we're going to have this Wednesday, actually, we've got some drama coming up in the points situation where Swerve and Jay White, who are both at 3 points, they're already fighting each other out the gate. So this already is going to be very interesting. Someone's going to end up with the tiebreaker here. we'll analyze things as we move along. Like, we haven't talked about tiebreakers yet in the C2. I'm only assuming that AEW is going to do the tiebreaker situation from the G1 Climax, where in the event of a tie, whoever holds the win over the other guy wins the tiebreaker, and then they move on. I'm assuming that's what they're going to do. But you see, this is what's interesting is already we've got Strickland and Jay White already like positioning that we're not going to have a three-way dance at the top for long. Like, one of these guys is going to start trailing, and we're going to have maybe two people. There may be two people at the top with 6 points if Moxley wins his match, or Swerve might be alone there at the top. But I think Mox is fighting Jay Lethal. I don't see Jay Lethal winning anything actually in this tournament. So I would assume Swerve and Mox getting it on with 6 points, leading to a league match between Swerve and Mox, which will continue to help elevate Swerve, right? So maybe this is the thing. Moxley wins against Briscoe, whereas I would have done a flippy-do here. I would have Briscoe win. But maybe we're saving the Mox loss to Swerve Strickland, who will continue his elevation. AEW right now needs to be centered around Swerve Strickland, Samoa Joe, and Hangman Adam Page. Those are the people you need to focus your company around. Throw in some Orange Cassidy in there, because everyone loves them. Everyone else in the across the roster is fantastic. Move away from Max and the nonsense. Move away from that. Move away from sports entertainment. Return back to basics. To what made this promotion really good. Anyway, we will continue our coverage of the Continental Classic next week here on the Mr. Warren Hayes Show, which will probably be at its regular slot, recorded live on Tuesday nights and then released on Wednesdays. And that brings us to the end of the weekly wrestling inspection. What are you going to do? Hey, thank you everyone for showing up here live on a Monday night off of our usual Tuesday night recordings. Because yes, the Mr. Warren Hayes Show is recorded live every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. We did it on a Monday this week. And geez, a lot of people hung out. I was surprised. I was sure that I was going to lose the ratings war to Monday Night Raw tonight, but it turns out not really. But that's exciting, and I appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for coming here. One last like on the video, if you're watching this on youtube.com/MrWarrenHayes right now, would be appreciated. Just as a like and a subscribe. Well, I already asked for the likes, but a subscribe would be as well. Just as a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or a 5-star rating on Spotify if you're listening to this on the audio side of things. That would be tremendous. I will be back on Thursday for a brand new Dynamite review, and Sunday for the Collision review, and back on Tuesday next week, God willing, for another recording of the Mr. Warren Hayes Show. So, in the meantime, folks, I hope you have a great week, because you deserve a great week. It should be great. Have a lot of fun. Go nuts, why don't you? And I'll see you next time.